So that contrasts to asexual reproduction, where you're growing a new copy of a plant from a particular part of that parent plant. So it could be a leaf or a stem or a piece of the root or a tuber, but from some part of that parent plant you're able to reproduce an exact copy of that parent plant, which is quite a phenomenal ability of plants to be able to do this, where you can take a part of that plant, grow an exact copy of that parent plant, and you can keep that process going on indefinitely. So for thousands of years, which is how long we've currently been able to do it, you can keep growing the same plant that might only live for 10 years in the wild. You can keep growing that same plant for thousands of years and produce hundreds of thousands of copies of that one plant by taking part of that parent plant and growing a new copy of it. And this allows us to create big orchards of trees where all of those trees are exactly the same. They'll produce fruit that's exactly the same. They'll grow to the same height, and they will respond the same way to the particular characteristics of the soil and the pests and the fertilizers that we use to grow that plant. So it gives us predictability, and we know how to manage that type of plant in the best way possible, and grow lots of copies of it and produce a large number of the type of fruit that we want. So with asexual reproduction, what we're often doing is we're taking a plant that grows as it would normally in nature, so as it grows in the soil. So this is the parent plant. We take a side stem of that plant, or if we're doing some other type of cutting, we'd take a root or a tuber, or we could graft it. But in the case of a cutting, we'd take a side stem of it, and it's this part which is called the node, which has cambion. So there's a layer of cells called the cambion, which lies just below the bark, and those cambion cells that are by the node have the characteristic that they can grow into different types of tissues. So if you take this side stem out, and it might have a couple of little branches with a couple of leaves on it, and it's from that part where there was the node that if we put that cutting in some sort of container where there's good water and air circulation, and it's kept warm and moist, it will grow roots from that node, and the growth of those roots will allow it to then start to absorb nutrients and water from whatever medium you plant it in, and it will start to grow new leaves, and after a month or two it will be a functional new plant that you can then pot out or plant out, and it will grow into an exact same copy of the parent plant. So if you have a parent plant with potentially thousands of side branches that you could take cuttings from, using this asexual reproduction technique, you can create thousands of copies of the one plant from that plant, and produce the same characteristics as that parent plant, so the same ability to produce the fruit or the growth method that you're after. The cuttings can often grow faster than from seed as well, depending on how big that cutting is. It could be a hardwood cutting, for example, which is a whole branch of a tree, and starting with more advanced tissue will allow it to grow roots and leaves faster and also grow faster. So you can get a kick start on the growth of a plant by growing it from cutting. So the beneficial characteristics of asexual reproduction is that you are creating exact same copy of the parent plant, and you can use a wide variety of techniques that we'll get into depending on the type of plant you're interested in, but they all have the same characteristic, which is of quite advantage, particularly in species like an apple tree, which there may be only 1 in 1,000 of those apple trees in the wild that taste good. By using asexual reproduction, you can take that one good tasting apple tree and produce hundreds and thousands of copies of it through asexual reproduction. Whereas if you use sexual reproduction, you'd have to pick out the one that would have that nice tasting fruit, which may for an apple tree be one in 1,000. But the advantage of that is that you're getting a wider variety of traits, and some of those traits may be beneficial as far as being able to withstand changes to the environment or changes in soil or different pests and diseases that come in. Whereas with asexual, whatever characteristics that parent plant, all of the other plants will also have those same characteristics, so there's less variation within the population.